okay, what I should do in my professional life, I've, I need to believe it's going to have a positive impact for the next generations.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Wisenetix podcast. I'm really happy to have here with me another awesome guest today, Thomas Laurent. Thomas is the CEO and founder of Micropep, and he's going to be sharing a little bit of his great journey so far into not only Micropep, but throughout his experience with entrepreneurship and startups and science. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming. Thomas, we'd like to start our conversations always with a brief introduction from our guest speaker. So if you can share a little bit more about yourself here.
Yeah, so I'm as you mentioned, so I'm the co-founder and CEO of Micropep Technologies. I'm a French entrepreneur. I'm actually 41. Started my career in France. I'm the happy father of two young daughters. I have a 7 years old and a 4 years old, and I'm currently living in the U.S. in Boston, Massachusetts.
Awesome, awesome. And so in terms of experiences, we had the opportunity to connect before, and you shared like a little bit of your background. You've been through a lot of different companies, working in startups, and most of them, if not all of them, was always connected to, heavily science-related industries, right? Pharmaceutical, now the agriculture, and so on. So thinking about your journey, not only as a professional actually, but also as a father, as a human being, what would you highlight as your main experiences in life? Your top three experiences, and what did you learn from them?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the first biggest experience I've had is related to my kids, definitely, and I mean every father probably could relate. I would put two experiences in that. One that unfortunately was a bit tough and tragic, and I don't want to spoil the mood, but it turns out that my wife and I we lost our first kid. It was a boy. He was 4 months old, and so that happened in 2015. Sudden death syndrome. Things happen, and yeah, tough time. And I think you mentioned recently, the challenges you've seen with flooded in Brazil, and those exceptional moments where tragedy happens. This is really, I think, defining moment for everybody to reflect on. Okay, what are your goals, your inspirations? Why are you just doing what you're doing? And obviously, to me, I've been scarred by that event. Fortunately, my wife and I got two beautiful, daughters after that, so that was so exciting and great moments. But yeah, definitely, I cannot talk about myself without mentioning that it has been a cornerstone, I think, in my personality and a big moment. So we were in our 30s, something like that. And I think that really helped me kind of put things in perspective between what you do at work versus what you do in your professional life. I won't say I'm perfect. I'm still working too much, but I was yeah, that was critical moment. And now, as I mentioned again, I'm very happy to have two daughters. And I think that has been also a strong driver personally to co-found Micropep and to work on something that I hope will make my kids proud when they grow up and they become adults. Like everybody, I'm paying attention to what's happening in the world. Climate change, in particular, is a big, topic causing stress. And definitely not perfect in everything I do. Definitely not. But I feel that maybe with that project, I could contribute in some positive ways to the future of my kids. And that has been a very, very strong driver to me. Is okay, what I should do in my professional life. I've, I need to believe it's going to have a positive impact for the next generations. So yeah, so don't want to kill the mood, but that's part of trajectories and personal lives. And to me, that has been really a moment that's also helped me prioritize things I wanted to do as a professional person and as a human being, basically. So yeah, the most important one, and that's what led to Micropep in some ways.
Yeah, it's definitely, the hard parts are also parts of life. And I'm gonna take actually uh, a little bit of this moment. I honestly I cannot imagine how it could be to be on your shoes, losing your first child. But you mentioned first you're working now. You're trying to work towards a mission, which is doing something that will help the planet, will help the world that we live to be a better place for your kids. And I cannot. I was planning to talk about this more towards the end of the episode, but I'm gonna take the moment also to just create a little bit of awareness and talk a little bit of what we're going through here in south of Brazil. For those who don't know, I'm Brazilian. I live in south of Brazil, and just now we had the most tragic natural, if we can call it well, it is natural, but there's definitely man impact on that, but natural catastrophe, I'd say, um, which is the whole state where I live was impacted by really heavy rains, and close to 90% of our cities were under a calamity state. So cities like the capital where I live, half of the city under water, people losing their homes, dead people, disappeared people, over 500,000 people lost, like had to leave their homes because they were underwater. So everyone losing everything. So it really puts us in perspective, and not only to think about how fragile we are, and of course we're gonna fight and work to get back, to the stage that we were before. It's gonna take a lot of effort, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna get there. But that does not erase the things that happen, and how we're impacted by that. It's been really tough, not only for me, but well, for not much for me compared to other people who are really suffering and lost their homes. I'm here in my apartment. I'm dry. I have electricity and water. So, but yeah, I just wanted to create a little bit of awareness on that. And yeah, we need to learn with that. We need to. Uh, there are a lot of people, talking about it. We have 24 hours radio now just covering that, and of course it's a natural disaster, but there is impact of man on that, the way we build things, the way we do our agriculture impacts on that as well. It helped because of like there was not a lot of trees and things that made the water just flow much easier. It was harder for the water to penetrate in the earth, so that made like everything. So it was a sequence of things, and of course we need agriculture. We love agriculture, but it's important for us to start thinking how we can do this in a more sustainable way, in a way that it does not impact that much our the place where it lives, right, in our lives. So
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to a bit. I haven't experienced what you have experienced definitely, but yeah, it's and it's happening kind of everywhere in the planet, and climate change has impact. Those episodes are not exceptions; they're happening more and more. I think what is tough in those situations, and I think that's something I learned with my own personal tragic experience. Let's say is how to become a bit resilient, because there are things that you cannot control and things that happened, and that's just the way they are. And unfortunately you would like to come back on that and try to influence the past, but you cannot. You have to deal with what you have. And I think you have many ways to react to that. I like to try taking the optimistic pass forward and say, okay, well, I'm there. This is what happened. What's the past is the past. Now, what I do next, and let's just try doing our best. And maybe the best won't be enough. Maybe it will be good. I don't know, but at least it should be a motivation sometimes to take that step back. Forgot about the new, I don't know, iPhone thing or the new trendy video on TikTok or whatever, and just say, okay, am I trying to do something that ultimately, at my scale, could have a positive impact for other communities, for the planet, for future generations. So yeah, important topics, and yeah, there's and to the transition to entrepreneurship, I really believe entrepreneurship is one way, not the only one, but one way to try having that impact and do something.
So let's start talking about business now, and entrepreneurship, science, fundraising, market expansion, regulatory markets, and all of that. But the question that I like to ask to transition to this part when we talk about business is, how would your parents describe what you do today?
That's a very good question. They would say that I'm working in science for agriculture and busy talking to investors. I think that would probably be their high level
It's kind
description.
of accurate. It's good. It's
It's
not a bad answer.
it's quite accurate. A bit more specific on the company. So we're developing crop protection active ingredients. So like biofungicide, bioherbicide, this type of categories of molecules based on small, we call them micropeptides, so very short proteins. And we have really built a company around that with a proprietary discovery engine to find new compounds, capabilities to produce them, etc., etc. So yeah, we're focusing on that aspect for the crop protection market and targeting different crops. We're working on soy, potato, grapes in particular at the moment, but the platform and the discovery engine we have built can address multiple crops, multiple geographies, multiple challenges.
As a good French, you need to save the grapes,
Yeah,
so we
exactly.
can
That's
have good wine, right? I'm a big fan of wine, so and Thomas, what can you tell us a little bit more about the background and inspiration that help you get where you are today, and
yeah.
face this challenge in crops protection and agriculture? What have you led to it?
Actually, so I started my career. So before that, I graduated in business. So I'm not from a scientific background. So I graduated from a French business school, and I do remember one interesting courses I got in entrepreneurship at that moment that I think probably planted the seed of what I'm doing today. But that was something, yeah, that really sparked my interest. Although after graduating from business school, I decided to go in a more, let's say, secure environment. So I went for strategy consulting, like many of my other friends at the time. So I joined a consulting firm in Paris, international firm, and it's kind of the business school after the business school, working for private equity funds, understanding markets, drivers, working for big corporates in different fields. So I did that for 4 years. I think that really helped me shape my analytical skills and understanding businesses globally. But after some times, I was a bit tired to you know tell other companies what they should do and leave the room with a nice PowerPoint deck and never knowing okay what's going to happen, practically speaking. So I had the opportunity to follow my wife from Paris to southwest of France to Toulouse in 2012. So I quit the well-paid and stable position at that consulting firm called ADK, and I gave a first shot at entrepreneurship at that time. So no securities and trying to work on different topics. So I first worked on a small wind turbine project with my father-in-law. So it turns out, I had advice in my business school to never do a business with families. We had that first product that was fine. Very good term with my father-in-law, so I think that was the top priority of that project. But that gave me a first hint of okay IP, grants funding, and trying to figure out okay how complicated it is actually to start something from zero and build something. So I work on this. I work on a project around urban gardening, urban farming in Toulouse as well. Teamed up with two young graduates from business school and agronomical school. Worked there for a while, but then after 2 years, my wife told me that yeah, maybe I should find again a more stable position. And I think that's a good advice. Always listen to your wife. So I found a position as a business developer in a technology transfer office. So same city in Toulouse. So that's a company, we call that usually TTO, Tech Transfer Office. The assignment and the mission is to scout for promising IP patents or new discoveries made in public laboratories, and then trying to see if those patents could be of use for the industry and trying to negotiate license with industrial companies at different stages. And it turns out that Micropep, the genesis of Micropep, comes from one of these technologies that were discovered in one specific laboratory in Toulouse by my two scientific co-founders, Jean-Philippe and Dominique. who had discovered the existence of a family of small peptides that plants are naturally producing to control their growth or resistance to disease and things like that. And for that particular discovery, the decision was made not to try licensing out to existing companies, but putting the IP in a startup. And so that was end of 2015. So I mentioned personal things happening at that moment, and for me that was a good moment to just do something else and then find a new purpose. So I basically volunteered and say, look, guys, I'm happy to jump in that project, dedicate time, and work alongside the scientists to try build that company from scratch. And so that's how Micropep started. So we co-founded Micropep in 2016.
Awesome. And do you see any relation or any reason behind your choices to, again, have this connection not only to entrepreneurship and business and administration, but also, things related to science? Is that like any kind of passion, or is there a reason for that?
I think, yeah, I think what I love with Micropep, and I think for me, it's checking three important things. I mentioned impact. I think I'm not picturing myself working on something that I don't believe can have a real positive impact. So that's a key driver. Um, I think second to your point is I like complexity. I like deep tech science. I think I'm kind of a curious person. I like to understand to a certain level because after a while I'm out of my depth. But I like to decipher complex things, mechanism, and I'm really passionate about asking questions to scientists and understanding, okay, why is it working like that, and what another way, and what's the science behind. So I'm really excited in talking to scientists. So that's checking, I think, my personal curiosity. But then third, have that business background, and to me science for science is okay, you need that, but to me I need to build businesses with science, and so how you can take those science and find ways to penetrate the market, find customers, win market shares, and really have the impact you're seeing, because to have a real impact people need to use your product at some point. So it's really that combination that I think personally is resonating with me.
Awesome, awesome. This specific market you're getting into, in the crops business, we're talking about agriculture, crop protection. Uh, this is a quite, heavily or regulated market, right? Just as, I don't know, for example, pharmaceutical companies and so on. Um, but there are also some different scenarios here because, as we talked before, in a pharmaceutical business, you have a specific framework that you need to follow when you are in like a startup, when you have a product concept and you want to, develop it and maybe sell to a company and so on, which is not the same thing in agriculture business, right? So, can you tell me two things we want to understand better? How do you navigate in those, you know, the challenges related to regulation? And the main differences with the scenario comparing the pharmaceutical world to the ag world. How do you deal with that? How do you make something that will make sense for companies? And
So yeah, I think you're touching on two big pain points, regulatory and yeah, we can call that that framework of innovation of R&D in ag. So I think the first one, I won't say we have solved it because regulatory is very complex, but I think early on um, we identified that although we were from a French university, and as every big country, we're proud of what we do, like and for good reasons. But from a business perspective, whether or not we had the best science coming from France, it was one thing, but ag is international. So I very, very rapidly understood that, okay, there's no point or need to just focus only on France. And more than that, because of regulatory and the type of products we are developing, it was very rapidly clear to us that Europe and then France was not going to be the first market, because regulatory is really impacting the strategy of this type of biotech businesses. So we rapidly figured out that, okay, more likely North America, Latin America were more likely easier markets to penetrate. So even when we founded the company and we did our first fundraising in 2018, building a company that has one foot in Europe, but also one foot in the Americas was part of the plan from the very beginning. And that happened in 2022 when I moved to the US to really kick off that international expansion. And today, on the regulatory side, we see that our first product are going to be authorized first in Latin America and then US. Europe's going to be after. So it's important for any entrepreneur or even companies to assess and understand what is the regulatory constraints, because these are the things you cannot truly control. You can try to influence. And I mentioned resilience, and there are things you can control, things you cannot. So sometimes, and that's the way I'm thinking, is you have to deal with the cards you got. And the cards for Europe were not the best ones. So, okay, of course, influencing, trying to make sure that regulatory is evolving is worth the effort. But at some point, you have a business to build. So let's be pragmatic and see where you can go faster. So that was our answer. So that's why Micropep now is not just a French company. That's why I'm speaking English. Every employee, including technicians, are speaking English. That was part of the culture we wanted to build, and we expanded in the Americas. So that's one pain point that we have to deal with, and then hopefully we're doing a good job there. The second one you mentioned is a pain point, and we're still dealing with it. So it's not solved. And one of the complexity I feel we have in our space is to what you mentioned is to for all companies and stakeholders to speak the same language. So to your comparison, I feel like in pharma, when you develop a drugs, there are common notions and language. People talk about phase one trials, phase two trials, and all of that is very well defined. And I think that is helping company to meet with each other. Uh, Same as in ag, it's not easy to launch a first product. I mean, the value chain is complex. You have companies like us innovating, trying to find new active ingredients. You have companies that can integrate those active ingredients in products, formulated products. Those products can either be sold directly or through distribution. Distribution in one country is not the same as another one, etc., etc. So it's complex, and to win, I feel our industry needs to collaborate. So we need to find ways to, navigate that go-to-market and work with others. But when you try to work with others, you need to understand each other. And I feel in pharma, when you say, okay, I have phase one studies, they know what phase one means. And people can sit together and think, okay, that's your product. It reached phase one. So now I can probably understand what is the remaining risk, what's the potential value, and come up maybe with a price. And of course, there's always negotiation behind the doors around that. But I feel people can meet with each other. And we don't have that in ag. For crop protection, even with chemistry and the big companies, the Bayer, BASF, Corteva, FMC, UPL, all of those big companies have been, exchanging assets, licensing in and out, chemical actives at different points, so they know how to deal with that. But if you go and try to look for public information about what we call the stage gates or the R&D processes, like the phase one, phase two of ag, it was funny to see. I did that I think a few months ago. I wasn't able to find BSF's one nor Corteva's, wasn't public. I found the Bayer's stage gate. I found FMC stage gate. I think for one, they had 3 research phases and 3 development phases. And for the other, it was 5 and 5 for chemicals. I mean, guys, can you just sit down and agree on what are the steps so that everybody understand how we do it? And I'm just talking about chemistry. For biologicals, which have particularities, okay, there's probably a slightly adjustment on those phases. But to me, I really feel this is something missing, and that will help everyone to understand, okay, what does it takes to go from A to Z? What are the steps that are recognized by the industry? And then how much it costs to go from beginning to maybe end of research? And how much potentially could I sell a compound that managed to get to end of research? And in pharma, you have a lot more, you know, history, background information to come up with methodology to assess that and numbers. They're not perfect, obviously, but you get some material. In ag, it's very blurry. We don't really know. So every company has to kind of reinvent that. Venture firms, they don't really know if they need to invest 10 million, 20 million, 50 million to get from A to where and what would be the outcome. So I feel this is something that collectively the industry, everyone, could probably get benefits by collaborating and coming up with okay, that's a proposal, stage gates, or R&D framework.
I have two follow-up questions on that. The first one is that since you started with Micropep, do you see any evolution on that? Like, do you see like more companies complaining, more startups or people with ideas, product ideas, facing the same challenge, and yeah, any movement from companies or public institutions towards some clear steps for these processes? And in this scenario where you don't have a lot of clarity, how do you guys approach risk sharing with potential partners, and how do you negotiate that so both sides can have mutual benefits and grow together?
Yeah. So on the first point, yeah, I start to hear and I'm aware of initiatives that are going in the right direction. So there is one that is, I think, regrouping different venture firms, including corporate ventures and people from the industry. I think there's a white paper type of initiative that's hopefully should be released in the coming weeks. I'm not sure exactly when, but I think there's some initiative taken by key leaders in that space to educate. So I think the first white paper would be on chemistry. So I think it's going to give a first foundation for that. So I think it's very encouraging. And I was lately involved in that because I shared the same worries, and I was really happy to see that there was that group of professionals starting to tackle that issue. So I think it's moving in the right direction. So I'm very hopeful that it's going to take time for everybody to understand, agree, and make it a common standard, let's say stage gate. But I think it's going to happen. So that's one. I think for us, I mean, even for us as we build a company, we had to think of okay, what are the most efficient R&D processes to rapidly find the most promising compounds. So even ourselves, we're thinking in challenging our steps to well address the problems earlier than later. So to be smart in the way we conduct R&D, studies, because in some ways you can spend a lot of time on something by and then discovering late that it's not going to work for regulatory, so you have to go back. So we're trying to be as smart as we can on that. So we're building that. And I think that's the first step, because then when you're in a business relationship, you have to educate the other party with the way you are doing things, especially for us because we're dealing with peptides. I think it's more or less the same with other proteins type of companies, but these are new types of active ingredients. So there's not much track records on those. They come with lots of benefits, but they have their own challenges. So there's a lot of education on okay, we are doing things this way because we believe that's the most efficient one. And it takes time because you did that the first time and then again. And so hopefully, as we develop more partnership and that framework gets structured, and that could speed up the process. But yeah, conversations with different partners obviously takes a lot of time, and I think that's a challenge with ag as well, is the lead time to get to a partnership. Uh, you know, decomplexifying science and we are on these steps, and also factorizing the growing seasons, because contrary to pharma, you cannot do trials whenever you want. You have to meet certain deadlines, and if you miss the season, then okay, let's
Lost a
wait
year.
another year.
Yeah.
So that's why it's I feel a bit more complex on that.
Now, thinking about the approach to market expansion. First, you guys from start thought about Micropep as a more like a global company with a one foot in France slash Europe, another foot in the Americas. Uh, how do you guys approach the market expansion for Micropep across different countries in South America and North America? And how do you also approach fundraising for this? Because you need investors as well, right? How do you guys are working those aspects?
On fundraising, so we have been, yeah, I mean, most of my time, not only that, but a big portion of my time has always been around, selling the company to get funded and making sure we have what it takes to succeed. So sharing the vision, the strategy, and where we want to go. So we're actually closing a new round of funding. So we have been doing that lately as well. Um, and I think what's to succeed here, I think it's really important to really understand. I mean, that's where I'm coming from. Really understands the environment in which you're positioning the company. That means we mentioned regulatory, we mentioned business partners. It's important to understand competitions, understand the different markets and the farmer's pain point to really see if you can position what you need. And try to look at different ways to get money at some point, because raising capital is not an end, it's a mean. It's a mean to become profitable and not needing investors anymore. And as mentioned, it takes time to develop, launch, sell products. So it's how we can figure out and find a business model on that. I think my take today, and that's really a piece of strategy. Um, I think the challenge in crop protection is that it's a very, very fragmented market. So taken as a whole, I don't know, herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, was it 40 billion or 80 billion? I mean, it's big markets. But if you zoom in, um, it's made of a succession of multiple smaller markets. And the problem is that it's very fragmented, and farmers in the US are not the same as farmers in Latin America, and the grower that is producing grapes is not the same as the grower producing soy. So they have different constraints, and that's very different games. So one's usual strategy for startup is to think of, okay, let's position a product on the, let's say that's my beachhead, my first market, just for me, a niche market that I can capture and dominate on my own, which I think is a very sound and good strategy. The challenge with Hag is that usually those niche markets are quite small. I'll give you an example. I believe the fungicide market in the US for grapes only, I think it's around 100 million US dollars, more or less. Of course, mostly California. So very happily you can think, okay, let's focus and become the best fungicide company on grapes in California. But when you look at the active ingredients that are used to protect grapes against diseases, you don't have one or two or three products. It's much more competitive. You have like 10 to 15, if not 20 different products, including generics, including sulfur with different price points. And even the best chemical is doing, I don't know, 10 million annual revenue on that niche market. So if you are a startup and you want to dominate that niche, maybe you'll do 5-ish million a year if you're doing a great job. The challenge when you do that first is how you scale from 5 million to 10, 20, 50, 100 million without needing to have a sales force in every country on the planet and targeting every crops on the planet. And to me, I feel the only way to succeed in that would be to be really strong on the active ingredients. We have active that can be positioned on different markets and geographies, but then partnering with companies so that they buy the active and they make products. And the only way to succeed in that is active needs to be, of course, efficient and all you want, but it needs to be cheap. And that's a big difference with pharma. You need to make sure you sell the active ingredient cheap enough so that someone can buy it, formulate it, sell it to a distributor that is going to sell to a farmer that is not necessarily making a lot of money. And that's, I think, the biggest challenge to solve the equation. And I feel we have a path to succeed in that, to solve that equation. We're not finished yet. There's a lot of, milestones to pass to be there. But I feel that's one recipe to potentially succeed in that space.
Wow, yeah, it's complex. I've never seen had this perspective before about, yeah, you see ag as a giant market, billionaire market, but then if you again look closer, lots of smaller silos with a big competition, and yeah, pricing is a becomes
Yeah.
a very important aspect. Again, if we look at uh, the crop market is quite new for me. I'm still learning, but I've been working more with a livestock market for the past few years, and I know crops because I have the family of my fiance is works with crops, and there's a lot of oscillation. In a year you're gonna have a really good result and everything, but then suddenly weather doesn't help or these or that, and then you don't have money, you don't make a lot of profit. If you don't make profit, you don't have a lot of money to buy
Exactly.
fungicides or anything like that, and it's like a series of things that will impact the whole value chain. And it's the same that I would use as an example. Livestock has been facing some heavy, strong challenges in the past few years. It's not been tough, and it's not being easy, and producers are not profiting that much. So how do you work with that? It needs to be really good, have a great cost effect.
Farmers told us, yeah, seed is yield, so seed is very important. Crop protection is more insurance policies. It's more okay, but the value, farmers perceive the value really in the seed, the genetic and the potential in terms of yield, and then using crop protection as a okay, if the weather is bad, if we feel there's going to be diseases. I mean, it depends on insect disease and of course weeds, different, let's say, patterns. But sometimes it's, do I spray? Maybe I don't have to. And so that's very different markets and trends and challenges between those two industries.
Do you see technology like not chemical or biological technology, but technology like drones and those sort of things facilitating that? Because today you have technology to, I don't know, you don't need to spray things all over plantations. You can map, see where it's needed, and then have a targeted action there. Does that help you guys or don't? How does that play in?
I think it's great to see that coming, and I started. I mentioned I think 2016, so I've been watching that space since, and I've seen a lot of progress and adoption in those technologies. I think it's definitely helping. I think what it's also provided is also better understanding of how and why products are performing in different situations. Um, First, it helps understand that within the field, you have different things happening. It's not homogeneous. You have maybe areas where, I don't know, natural fertilizer content is higher, so maybe you need less of this. Maybe in other part of the field, it's different. So I think those learnings can also help for companies like us and others understand, oh, we perform better in those type of situations, and that's going to help farmers. So no, I think definitely it's going to help. The real question behind is the speed of adoption and when every farmers will have their drones there, and I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah,
And again, back to economics, and when you look back to economics, it's also lots of questions. To me, I'm thinking not only about the farmers but everybody on the chain, because farmers needs to make a living, and it's a tough job everywhere on the planet. And I think us at the end of the as consumer, I mean, this time, I think we have a part and a role to play. And looking at that in France, I think the portion of the budget that French people are spending in money compared to 30 years ago is very, very has shrinked a lot. We're spending more money to buy the new iPhone and the new computer, so we forgot how value food is, and that actually, if we want good products, we need to be able to pay for that. And I feel because of climate change and everything, I think we will have to get more used to putting more for personal budget into food, because that's very important.
absolutely. Uh, Thomas, the conversation is great, but we're getting to the end here. For us to wrap up here, do you have any final messages for our audience there? And just so you know, we have people that work with business, people from startups, we have people working with marketing and communication. Any final message to the audience and people that are listening to us?
So yeah, I think I'll going to continue to call out this industry. I mean, people that have insights in how we can structure that, R&D stages and framework for chemistry, but also biologicals, proteins, RNA. I mean, please try to contribute in any ways. Maybe you can, circulate that and then reach out to you and get that. But I feel it's we need to understand and sit down and as an industry figure out the best way to partner and speaking the same language. So we need to make that language very clear. So that would be my first, let's say, comment. And yeah, for every entrepreneur that might be listening, yeah, just go for it, and that's worth it.
Action. It's all about action.
Yeah, action.
Awesome. And my very last question is where, if anyone in the audience wants to connect with you, learn more about yourself or Micropep or the solutions you guys are working on, where can they find you online?
Yeah, I think best way could be message me on LinkedIn. Um, I'm 41, so I miss the latest trends in social networks, but LinkedIn is one of them that I'm following. Apologies if I not reply by the hour, but I'm really reading every messages and I'm trying to respond every time. So that could be a good way to get me. Thomas Laurent on LinkedIn, Micropep.
Perfect. Thomas, thanks a lot for the great conversation. It was really nice to talk to you, learn more about the work you guys are doing, and I'm sure that the audience enjoyed as well and were able to get a few nuggets of this conversation. And for you that is out there listening to us, to our conversation, thanks for your company, and I hope to see you guys in our next episode. Thanks, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you.